Hey guys, tonight we're slipping into the shadows of 16th century Japan, a time when orphaned girls became the deadliest spies in feudal history. Drop your city and local time in the comments. It's fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now dim the lights, maybe light a candle for that gentle glow, and let's walk together into a world where temple bells weren't just for prayer, they were weapons. You wake up in 1561, the smell of incense and morning mist fills your nostrils, but something's wrong. You're not in your family home anymore. That burned down 3 battles ago. You're an orphan now, sleeping on a straw mat in what looks like a shrine. Your stomach gnaws at itself like a hungry wolf, and the only sounds are distant temple bells echoing across the mountains. But here's the twist. Those bells aren't calling monks to prayer. They're signalling the start of your transformation into something Japan has never seen before. You blink awake to find a woman standing over you. Her name is Mochizuki Chiyome, and she's about to offer you something that sounds too good to be true. A new family, a roof over your head, and training that will make you invaluable to the most powerful warlord in Japan. The catch? You'll become a weapon disguised as a shrine maiden. Welcome to the secret world of the Kunoichi, where 300 orphaned girls learn to topple empires with nothing but their wits and temple bells. Listen to the gentle clang of bronze against wood in the distance. That sound. It's not marking prayer time, it's marking your enemy's final moments. You're not alone in this wooden hut that smells like old incense and forgotten dreams. Around you, dozens of other girls are stirring awake. All orphans, all refugees from the endless civil wars tearing Japan apart. Some are as young as 7, others barely teenagers, but they all share the same hollow look of children who've seen too much death. Your new family isn't bound by blood. It's bound by survival. Chiyome moves between the sleeping mats like a ghost, her silk robes whispering secrets against the wooden floor. She's a widow herself. Her husband died at the 4th Battle of Kawanakajima, cut down by an enemy blade while serving the Takeda clan. But instead of spending her days weeping into rice wine and composing sad poetry like other noble widows, she chose revenge. Cold, calculated, absolutely brilliant revenge. "Rise, my daughters," she says, and her voice carries the authority of someone who's turned grief into purpose. You sit up, your back aching from the thin mat that's somehow still more comfortable than sleeping in burned villages. The morning air bites your skin like tiny frozen needles, but you don't shiver. Shivering shows weakness. And weakness gets you killed in this new world you've stumbled into. Here's what Chiyome doesn't tell you on your first morning. You're about to become part of the most sophisticated spy network in feudal Japan, while the samurai are busy hitting each other with swords and arguing about honor codes. She's building an army of invisible warriors, girls who can walk into any castle, any temple, any military camp without raising suspicion. Because who suspects a humble shrine maiden of carrying poison in her prayer beads? You learn this the hard way when breakfast arrives. A thin gruel that tastes like disappointment mixed with hope. The girl next to you, maybe 10 years old, whispers that she's been here for 6 months. "I can pick any lock now," she says, stirring her gruel with a chopstick that doubles as a lockpick. "And I know 17 ways to kill a man with a temple bell." She says this like she's discussing the weather, which is when you realise your childhood just officially ended. Spoiler alert, those temple bells everyone keeps mentioning, they're not just for show. You've been at Chiyome's compound in Nezu village for exactly 1 week, and your hands already look like raw meat. Every morning starts the same way, before dawn, when the temple bells ring across the valley like bronze ghosts calling the dead to prayer. But these bells aren't calling you to worship, they're calling you to weapons training. The wooden dummy in front of you has seen better days. Its straw-stuffed torso is shredded from countless practice strikes, and someone's drawn a crude face on its head that somehow manages to look both bored and judgmental. You grip the training bell in your hands. It's smaller than the massive bronze boncho that hang in temple towers, but heavy enough to crack a skull if you know where to swing it. And you're learning where to swing it. A temple bell isn't just an instrument of prayer, instructs Sensei Yukiko. A woman whose age is impossible to guess, but whose scars tell stories of battles you can't imagine. It's a weapon that hides in plain sight. Every shrine maiden carries one. No one questions why. She demonstrates the proper grip, showing you how to hold the bell's wooden striker like a club while keeping the bell itself ready to block or bash. The striker alone can shatter a man's windpipe. The bell can cave in his skull. Together, they make you deadly while looking devout. You swing the striker at the dummy's throat. The impact sends vibrations up your arm that make your teeth ache, but the satisfying thunk tells you you've hit your target. Around you, 30 other girls practice the same movements, some crying from exhaustion, others grinning with the fierce joy of discovering they're good at violence. The youngest, a 7-year-old named Emmy, swings her tiny bell with such vicious precision that even Yukiko nods approvingly. Here's what they don't tell you about becoming a kunoichi. The training never stops hurting. Your muscles scream constantly. Your fingers bleed from practicing lockpicking with rough metal tools. Your throat burns from learning to speak in different dialects, because a spy from Kyoto shouldn't sound like a farm girl from Shinano. But the pain isn't the worst part. The worst part is how quickly you start to enjoy it. Listen to the wooden bells clacking against each other as 30 girls learn to kill in silence. By noon, your bell fighting lesson transitions into something even more dangerous: acting. Chiyome herself oversees this part of your education, teaching you to transform from a war-scarred orphan to a humble Miko shrine maiden. Your greatest weapon isn't the bell in your hands, she explains, adjusting your posture until you look properly submissive. It's the fact that men see a holy woman and assume you're harmless. You practice bowing with the exact angle that signals respect without subservience. You learn to walk with the shuffling gait of someone devoted to spiritual rather than physical pursuits. Most importantly, you memorize the prayers and rituals that will let you blend in at any shrine from Edo to Osaka. The irony isn't lost on you. You're learning to fake devotion to gods you've stopped believing in, because where were they when your village burned? Now, Chiyome says, producing a folded paper from her sleeve, let's discuss your first real assignment. The paper contains a map of a rival daimyo's castle, complete with guard rotations and weak points in the outer walls. Lord Imagawa's been intercepting our supply lines. We need to know how he's getting his information. She points to a small temple within the castle grounds. You'll pose as a travelling Miko seeking shelter. Once inside, you'll locate his private study and photograph. She pauses, noting your confused expression. Memorize any documents you find there. Your stomach drops. This isn't practice anymore. She's actually sending you into an enemy stronghold, armed with nothing but a temple bell and the ability to fake religious devotion. If you're caught, torture and execution await. If you succeed, Takeda Shingen, the most powerful warlord in central Japan, will owe your life to a band of orphaned girls and their bronze bells. You nod anyway, because what choice do you have? Besides, the girl next to you just volunteered to go too, and she's only 8 years old. The plan has more holes than a battlefield casualty, but somehow that makes it perfect. 3 months into your training, you've mastered the art of looking harmless while carrying 17 different weapons concealed in your shrine maiden outfit. Your obi sash hides throwing knives disguised as incense sticks. Your prayer beads contain enough poison to kill a horse, or a daimyo depending on your mission requirements. And that innocent temple bell hanging from your rope belt? Its bronze surface has been sharpened to razor edges that can slice through silk or skin with equal ease. Today's lesson is your most dangerous yet: seduction without sex. You're sitting in a circle with 20 other girls, ranging in age from 10 to 17, learning how to manipulate powerful men's emotions without giving them what they actually want. Sensei Minori, a former courtesan who joined Kiyome's network after her patron was assassinated, explains the delicate balance. Men of power are used to getting everything they desire, she says, her voice carrying the wisdom of someone who's survived the pleasure quarters of Kyoto. But desire unfulfilled is more powerful than desire satisfied. You'll make them want you, trust you, confide in you, but you'll never belong to them. She points to your youngest classmate. Even you, Emi-chan, a 7-year-old, can wrap a lonely samurai around her finger by playing the adorable lost daughter he never had. You practice on each other first, learning to read micro-expressions, to mirror body language, to ask leading questions that feel like casual conversation. Your partner today is Yuki, a 13-year-old who was rescued from a burned-out brothel in Kai Province. She's teaching you how to tilt your head when listening, how to touch someone's arm at exactly the right moment to create intimacy without impropriety. The key, Yuki explains, is making them feel like the most fascinating person in the world while you're talking to them. Men will spill state secrets to a woman who makes them feel clever. She demonstrates by pretending to be captivated by your explanation of temple bell maintenance, a subject that should bore anyone to tears, but her rapt attention makes you feel like you're revealing the mysteries of the universe. The real test comes when Chiyome brings in actual men for practice. These are loyal Takeda retainers who volunteered to help train the Kunoichi, knowing their conversations are being studied for intelligence-gathering techniques. You're assigned to accidentally encounter one during his evening walk through the compound gardens. His name is Matsuda-san, a middle-aged clerk who handles supply requisitions for the Takeda army. Your mission: discover how many arrows the clan has stockpiled without asking directly about arrows. You approach him while he's admiring the autumn maple trees, carrying your bell and wearing your most innocent expression. "Excuse me, honourable sir," you say, bowing at precisely the correct angle for a humble Miko addressing a samurai retainer. "I couldn't help but notice you seem troubled. In my prayers, I often find solace in contemplating how prepared we are for winter's challenges." The conversation flows naturally from there. You express concern about whether the shrine has enough supplies for the cold months, which leads him to boast about the Takeda clan's excellent preparation, which leads to specific numbers about grain stores, weapon stockpiles, and military readiness. Within 20 minutes, you know exactly how many arrows they have, where they're stored, and which supplier they're buying from. Matsuda-san walks away feeling like he had a lovely chat with a devout young woman who really appreciated his wisdom. You walk away with intelligence that could shift the balance of power in 3 provinces. That night, as temple bells echo across the valley, marking the evening prayers, you realize you're becoming something your parents never could have imagined. A weapon that looks like a gift from the gods. 6 months after arriving at Chiyome's compound, you're no longer the scared orphan who woke up on a straw mat. You're Miko-han Akko, a travelling shrine maiden with impeccable credentials, and a reputation for being slightly dim but exceptionally devout. Your cover identity has been tested at 3 different temples, and even the head priests believe you're exactly what you appear to be. A simple girl whose only talents are prayer and sweeping. They have no idea you've memorized the layout of their temples, identified which monks can be bribed, and located every secret entrance and exit. They don't know you've counted their grain stores, assessed their defences, and identified which local merchants might be selling information to rival clans. To them, you're just another pious young woman seeking spiritual guidance. To Chiyome, you're intelligence gold. Today marks your graduation from training to active duty. You're being sent to establish a permanent listening post in Imagawa territory, a tea house near a major crossroads where samurai, merchants and messengers regularly stop to rest. Your cover: you're a Miko who serves tea to travellers while collecting donations for shrine maintenance. Your real job: gathering intelligence on troop movements, supply convoys and political negotiations. The other graduates gather around you in the pre-dawn darkness, each preparing for their own assignments. Yuki is heading to Edo, where she'll work as a servant in a wealthy merchant's household. Emi, despite being only 7, is joining a group of travelling entertainers who perform at samurai estates. Each girl carries her temple bell and her carefully crafted cover story, but you all share the same invisible uniform, the ability to become whoever you need to be. Chiyome addresses your group one final time before you scatter across Japan like seeds in the wind. "You are no longer orphans," she says, her voice carrying across the courtyard like the bronze bells that mark the changing hours. "You are my daughters, and you carry the honour of our family into the world. Remember, a Kunoichi's greatest strength isn't her weapons or her training. It's that she fights a war no one knows is happening." She hands you a small wooden box containing your final supplies: poison needles disguised as sewing supplies, coded maps marking safe houses throughout central Japan, and a bronze temple bell that's been modified with internal compartments for hiding documents. The bell looks identical to thousands of others carried by shrine maidens across the country. but its hidden chambers can hold enough intelligence to topple governments. As dawn breaks over the mountains, you begin your journey to the tea house that will become your base of operations. Behind you, the compound empties as your sisters head toward their own destinations. Within a week, Chiyome's network will have active agents embedded in a dozen different territories, all of them invisible to their targets, all of them armed with bronze bells that ring with the sound of approaching doom. The temple bells that call across the valley this morning aren't marking the end of your training. They're announcing the beginning of a shadow war that will change the fate of feudal Japan. And the most terrifying part? Your enemies will never see it coming until it's far too late. The Crossroads Tea House sits at the intersection of 3 major highways, which means you serve approximately 40 cups of tea daily to people who could change the course of Japanese history, and they have absolutely no idea that the humble Miko pouring their tea is memorizing every word they say. Your cover is perfect. Everyone knows shrine maidens can supplement their temple donations by serving tea to travellers, and your slight limp from a childhood accident explains why you're not married off somewhere bearing samurai children. Your first real intelligence coup comes from the most unlikely source, a drunk supply officer who starts crying into his tea about his impossible job. You refill his cup with just the right amount of sympathy, and within an hour you know exactly when the next grain convoy will pass through, how many guards it carries, and which route they're taking to avoid bandits. The officer stumbles away thinking he had a therapeutic conversation with a kind religious girl. You think about how Takeda forces will be very interested in intercepting that convoy. The tea house itself is perfectly ordinary. Low wooden tables, reed mats for seating, and a small shrine in the corner where you perform daily prayers that are actually coded signals to passing Kunoichi agents. The shrine bell you ring during these prayers follows a specific pattern: 2 long tolls for all clear, 3 short rings for urgent intelligence, and a rapid series that means abort mission, enemies approaching. To casual observers, you're just a devout girl maintaining her spiritual practice. To trained ears, you're running a communication network. Your disguise extends beyond just looking the part. You've learned to speak with the slight accent of someone from a rural shrine, to bow with the exact humility expected from your station, and to ask innocent questions that reveal military secrets. When a samurai complains about his sword being dull, you recommend the metalworker your temple uses and learn which smiths are forging weapons for which clans. When merchants grumble about road conditions, you express concern for pilgrims' safety and discover which routes are clear for moving troops. The most dangerous intelligence comes from the late-night customers, messengers riding between castles under cover of darkness, carrying sealed documents that could shift the balance of power across 3 provinces. These men are exhausted, paranoid, and desperate for hot tea and a moment's rest. You serve them with extra honey and just enough concerned attention to make them feel safe. Last week, one such messenger dozed off at his table after 18 hours in the saddle. You noticed the corner of a document protruding from his sleeve, correspondence between Lord Imagawa and a potential ally discussing coordinated attacks on Takeda supply lines. While he slept, you carefully extracted the letter, memorized its contents, and slipped it back into his sleeve so perfectly that he never knew it had been touched. The information was devastating, a 3-pronged assault planned for the next new moon, designed to cut off Takeda Shingen's access to coastal trade routes. You rang your shrine bell in the specific pattern that means critical intelligence, and within 2 days a Kunoichi courier disguised as travelling nun had collected your report and disappeared into the network. When the new moon came, Takeda forces were waiting in ambush for Imagawa's surprise attack. The enemy walked into a massacre that looked like brilliant military strategy, but was actually the result of orphaned girls with bronze bells outsmarting Japan's greatest warlords. 3 months into your tea house assignment, you've identified your highest value target, Hayashi Nobunaga, a wealthy silk merchant who supplies fabric to half the daimyo in central Japan. He's also lonely, recently widowed, and exactly the type of man who might confide his deepest secrets to a sympathetic young woman who reminds him of his late daughter. The problem? He's too intelligent to fall for obvious manipulation and too experienced with women to be easily seduced. Your solution is so brilliantly simple it feels like cheating. You don't try to manipulate him at all. Instead, you become genuinely interested in his stories about the silk trade, his memories of his daughter, and his philosophical observations about the changing world. The key insight, which Chiyome drilled into every one of her Kunoichi, is that authentic connection often yields better intelligence than artificial seduction. Hayashi-san visits your tea house every Tuesday on his way between Kyoto and Edo, always ordering the same green tea with rice cakes. You learn his daughter died of fever 2 years ago, that he blames himself for not being home when she got sick, and that he's considering retiring because the constant travel reminds him of all the time he missed with his family. You listen with genuine sympathy, partly because your training taught you to mirror emotions, but partly because his grief reminds you of your own losses. The breakthrough comes when he mentions his biggest problem: counterfeit silk flooding the market from an unknown source. "It's destroying the honest merchants like me," he says, stirring his tea with the slow movements of a man carrying invisible weight. "Someone with serious backing is producing fake silk that's good enough to fool even experienced buyers. My clients are starting to question whether my goods are authentic." You express horror at such dishonesty while mentally calculating the intelligence value. Counterfeit goods require significant resources, workshops, skilled workers, and distribution networks. More importantly, they represent a coordinated economic attack designed to destabilize legitimate trade. You ask innocent questions about where the fake silk is appearing, what it looks like, and which regions seem most affected. Over 6 weeks of Tuesday conversations, you piece together a comprehensive picture of the counterfeiting operation. The fake silk is appearing primarily in territories controlled by, or allied with, Lord Imagawa. The quality suggests access to genuine silkworms and experienced weavers. Most tellingly, the distribution pattern follows the same routes used by Imagawa's military suppliers. Your conclusion: Lord Imagawa isn't just planning military attacks onto Takeda territory. He's waging economic warfare using counterfeit luxury goods to disrupt trade relationships and weaken Takeda's civilian support base. It's brilliant, subtle, and exactly the kind of intelligence that traditional samurai scouts will never discover because they're too busy looking for armies instead of examining market trends. When you ring your shrine bell with the urgent intelligence pattern, you're not just reporting military movements, you're revealing an entirely new form of warfare that could reshape how clans compete for power. The Kunoichi courier who collects your report looks genuinely impressed when you explain the counterfeiting network's implications. High praise from someone trained by Chiyome herself. 2 months later, Takeda forces raid 3 suspected counterfeiting workshops in Imagawa territory, destroying equipment worth thousands of koban and capturing evidence that implicates several prominent merchants in the economic warfare scheme. The raids look like random anti-banditry operations, but they're actually surgical strikes based on intelligence gathered by a simple tea-serving Miko who learned to care about an old man's business problems. Hayashi-san never knows that his Tuesday conversations helped expose one of the most sophisticated economic attacks in feudal Japanese history. He just knows that the strange counterfeiting problem mysteriously disappeared around the time he started looking forward to chatting with the thoughtful young shrine maiden who made excellent tea and actually listened when he talked. On the night that changed everything, you're cleaning teacups by candlelight when the temple bells stop ringing. Not just your shrine bell, all the bells from every temple within 10 miles. The silence hits you like a physical blow, because in 6 months of intelligence work, you've never heard such complete quiet. Temple bells mark the hours, call for prayers, and warn of dangers. When they all stop at once, something is terribly wrong. The explanation comes with the dawn. Lord Imagawa's forces have begun confiscating temple bells for military use, claiming they need the bronze to cast cannons for coastal defence. It's actually a brilliant counterintelligence move. He's figured out that the bells are being used for communication, even if he doesn't know exactly how. By seizing them under the patriotic pretext of national defence, he's effectively blinded Chiyome's network while looking like a responsible leader, protecting Japan from foreign threats. Your tea house fills with agitated travellers throughout the morning, all discussing the unprecedented bell seizures. Monks are arriving from temples across 3 provinces, some angry, others philosophical about the sacrifice required for national defence. But you notice something the other customers miss. The seizures aren't random. They're targeting specific temples, the ones that happen to be at communication nodes in Chiyome's network. An elderly monk from Zenrinji Temple sits at your corner table, speaking in low tones to his companion about the strange visitors who arrive before the official seizure teams. Men who knew exactly which bells to take, he whispers. They ignored our oldest, most valuable bells and took only the newer ones, almost like they were looking for specific modifications. Your blood runs cold. Someone has betrayed the network, providing detailed intelligence about which bells contained hidden compartments and communication equipment. The betrayal becomes clear when a travelling merchant mentions seeing Yuki, your fellow graduate from Chiyome's compound, being escorted in chains toward Imagawa's main castle. She was captured 3 days ago at her post in Edo, which means she's been interrogated long enough to reveal operational details about the entire network. The merchant describes her as a young woman dressed as a shrine maiden who was apparently involved in some kind of spying scandal. You maintain your composure while serving tea, but internally you're calculating survival odds. If Yuki broke under interrogation, and even the strongest people eventually break under skilled questioning, then Imagawa's forces know about the tea house, your cover identity, and probably your mission parameters. You have maybe hours before armed samurai arrive to arrest the spy posing as a Miko at the Crossroads tea house. The decision comes easier than you expected. You've been preparing for this moment since your first week of training when Sensei Yukiko taught. You that captured Kunoichi don't get trials. They get tortured for information and then executed publicly as examples to other potential spies. Your shrine bell, hidden beneath your sleeping mat, contains enough poison to kill yourself quickly if capture becomes inevitable. But first, you have one final mission to complete. As the last customer leaves that evening, you systematically destroy every piece of evidence that could compromise other network agents. Codebooks go into the fire. Hidden documents dissolve in specially prepared acid. Your modified shrine bell gets disassembled, its secret compartments emptied, and the bronze melted down into an ordinary religious artifact. By midnight, the Crossroads tea house contains nothing that would interest enemy investigators. You slip away before dawn, leaving behind a note explaining that urgent family business calls you back to your home temple. Your tea house customers will remember a devout young Miko who served excellent tea and listened sympathetically to their stories. They'll never suspect that the humble shrine maiden was actually one of the most effective intelligence operatives in feudal Japan, or that her bronze bell helped topple 3 major military operations. As you disappear into the network of safe houses that will carry you back to Chiyome's compound, you hear temple bells ringing in the distance. New bells, hastily installed to replace the ones seized for national defense. The sound is different, sharper, and less resonant than the old bronze. But they're ringing nonetheless, and that means the network survives. Somewhere in the mountains, Mochizuki Chiyome is already training the next generation of Kunoichi, teaching orphaned girls to hide weapons in prayer beads and turn temple bells into instruments of invisible warfare. The bells may fall silent sometimes, but the shadows they cast never disappear. You're standing at the gates of Imagawa's main castle dressed as a Miko seeking shelter for the night, and every instinct screams that this is a terrible idea. The guards scrutinize your travel papers, perfectly forged documents claiming you're en route to a festival in Kyoto, while you maintain the humble demeanor of someone whose biggest concern is whether the temple donation box has enough coins for rice. What they can't see is the cold calculation behind your downcast eyes, memorizing guard positions, weapon placements, and architectural weaknesses. Your modified temple bell hangs innocently from your rope belt, its bronze surface concealing compartments filled with lockpicks, poison needles, and a detailed map of the castle's interior layout provided by a previous Kunoichi who died getting that information out. The bell's wooden striker has been hollowed out and filled with a fast-acting paralytic. One precise strike to the right pressure point, and even a samurai warrior drops like a stone. To the guards, you're carrying standard Miko equipment. To anyone who knows what to look for, you're armed to the teeth. The castle's guest quarters for travelling religious figures occupy a separate wing connected to the main compound by a covered walkway that passes directly beneath Lord Imagawa's private study. Coincidence? Absolutely not. Chiyome's intelligence network spent 8 months identifying this vulnerability, sacrificing 2 agents to map the building's layout and security rotations. You're walking into a trap that your sisters died to prepare. Your cover story holds up under casual questioning from the guard captain. You're travelling to Kyoto for a purification ritual, you've been on the road for 6 days, and yes, you'd be grateful for a safe place to sleep before tomorrow's final push to the capital. The captain assigns you a small room and warns you to stay in the guest wing after sunset. For your own safety, he explained, though his tone suggests the danger isn't from external threats. Night falls with the sound of temple bells echoing across the castle grounds, bells that were recently confiscated from local temples and now hang in the armory, their bronze being prepared for conversion into weapons. The irony isn't lost on you. Imagawa is literally melting down the instruments of your network's communication system to forge tools of war, but he's made one critical mistake. He's keeping them intact until the metalworkers arrive next week, which means those bells are still available for more traditional purposes. At midnight, when the guard rotation reaches its thinnest point, you begin your infiltration. The route requires climbing onto the guest wing's roof, crossing 30 feet of open tiles without making a sound, and descending through a window that's supposed to be secured but has been left slightly ajar by a sympathetic servant, another Kunoichi who infiltrated the castle months ago as a kitchen worker. Your temple bell becomes a climbing tool its cord used to lower yourself silently from roof level to window ledge. The bell itself serves as a counterweight, its familiar bronze chime muffled by cloth wrapping. To anyone listening, the soft sounds are just normal nighttime settling of an old wooden building. To you, they're the calculated notes of invisible infiltration. Lord Imagawa's study contains exactly what you hope to find. Detailed maps showing planned attacks on Takeda territory, correspondence with allied daimyo discussing coordinated strategies, and, most valuable of all, a roster of double agents operating within Takeda's own forces. The information is worth hundreds of lives and could shift the balance of power across central Japan. But as you photograph the documents using a tiny camera concealed in your prayer beads, you hear footsteps in the hallway outside. Heavy boots moving with military precision. They're not patrol guards, those wear soft-soled shoes for stealth. These are search teams, and they're heading directly for this room. You have approximately 90 seconds to complete your mission and escape, or join the growing list of Kunoichi who died serving Chiyome's Shadow War. The documents contain battle plans for next month's offensive, but copying them requires precious time you might not have. Your hand moves to the temple bell at your waist, fingers finding the hidden trigger that will release its paralytic payload. If you're discovered, you'll take at least one enemy with you before they can interrogate you about the network. Their footsteps stop outside the door. The door handle turns with the soft whisper of oiled metal, and you realise you've made a fatal miscalculation. This isn't a random patrol, it's a deliberate search based on specific intelligence. Someone knows you're here, which means your cover has been blown from the beginning. The question isn't whether you'll be captured, but whether you can complete your mission before they kill you. You freeze behind Lord Imagawa's writing desk. Documents half photographed, camera still whirring softly as it captures the final image of battle plans that could save thousands of Takeda lives. The footsteps enter the room, 3 men, moving with the coordinated precision of experienced manhunters. One heads directly for the window you entered through, cutting off your escape route. Another positions himself by the door. The third begins methodically searching the room with someone who knows exactly what he's looking for. "Miko-san!" calls a cultured voice from near the doorway, using the respectful term for shrine maidens, but with an undertone that suggests he knows exactly what you really are. "Please emerge from behind the desk. We have much to discuss." The voice belongs to Lord Imagawa himself. You recognise it from intelligence briefings where other Kunoichi described his distinctive Kyoto accent and habit of speaking in formal court language, even during casual conversation. You have 2 choices: surrender and hope to survive long enough to be rescued, or fight your way out and probably die in the attempt. The modified temple bell at your waist suddenly feels impossibly heavy, its hidden paralytic payload representing your only chance of evening the odds against 3 armed samurai. But using it means abandoning any pretense of being an innocent Miko seeking shelter. The decision makes itself when you hear the distinctive sound of sword blades sliding from their scabbards. They're not planning to take you alive for interrogation. They're preparing to execute a spy caught in the act of stealing military secrets. Your cover story won't save you now, and diplomatic immunity doesn't apply to enemy agents operating under false identities. You emerge from behind the desk with your hands raised in apparent surrender, moving with the shuffling gait of a terrified young woman who's in far over her head. The performance is flawless. Trembling hands, wide eyes, stammered apologies about being lost while seeking the latrine. But your fingers find the bell's trigger mechanism, and your body shifts into the combat stance Sensei Yukiko drilled into you during those brutal training sessions. An interesting performance, Lord Imagawa observes, studying you with the calculating gaze of someone who's survived 30 years of political intrigue. But we know you're not a simple shrine maiden. The question is whether you're foolish enough to fight 3 samurai in an enclosed space, or intelligent enough to surrender and provide useful information about your network. His mistake is assuming you'll choose between fighting and surrendering. Chiyome's Kunoichi are trained for a third option, completing the mission regardless of personal cost. You still have 30 seconds of camera operation remaining, enough to capture the most critical documents on Imagawa's desk. Those battle plans are worth more than your life, and certainly worth more than the lives of 3 enemy samurai who think they've cornered a helpless girl. The temple bell swings forward as you lunge toward the nearest guard, its bronze surface catching moonlight like a falling star. The wooden striker, loaded with enough paralytic to drop a horse, connects with the pressure point below his ear with the satisfying precision of perfect technique meeting months of practice. He collapses instantly, his sword clattering across the wooden floor as his nervous system simply stops responding to conscious control. The sound of bronze striking flesh rings across the room like a funeral bell, announcing the beginning of a very short, very violent dance that will determine whether tomorrow's intelligence briefing reaches Takeda Shingen or dies with you in this candle-lit study. Lord Imagawa draws his own blade with the fluid motion of someone who's killed many people and expects to kill at least one more tonight. But he's about to learn why Mochizuki Chiyome chose orphaned girls over trained samurai for her shadow war. They have absolutely nothing left to lose. The second guard recovers from his surprise faster than you hoped, his blade coming up in a defensive stance that shows real combat experience. But he's fighting someone who learned warfare from a woman who turned grief into vengeance, and his traditional samurai training never prepared him for an opponent who weaponizes her apparent helplessness. You spin away from his first cut, using your Miko robes to conceal the direction of your movement while the temple bell swings in a wide arc toward his sword arm. The bronze connects with his wrist just below the guard, sending vibrations through the metal that loosen his grip without actually disarming him. It's not the decisive strike you need, but it buys you precious seconds to complete your real objective. Lord Imagawa advances with careful, measured steps, his blade held in a perfect middle guard that protects against attacks from any angle. He's not rushing this fight. He knows you're trapped, and time favours the side with reinforcements coming. But what he doesn't realise is that you're not trying to escape. You're trying to finish photographing his battle plans while staying alive long enough for the camera to complete its work. The mathematical precision required is almost beautiful. Dodge for 12 more seconds while the device captures the final strategic documents, then fight your way to the window, rappel down the castle wall using the bell's cord, and disappear into the night before the entire garrison mobilizes. Simple in theory, nearly impossible in practice, and absolutely necessary for the survival of everyone you care about. Your second opponent attacks with an overhead strike designed to split you from collar to sternum, but you slide to the left while simultaneously swinging the temple bell upward to catch his descending wrist. The impact redirects his blade into the wooden floor, where it sticks momentarily, just long enough for you to drive the sharpened edge of the bell into the nerve cluster behind his knee. He drops with a scream that will wake half the castle. Lord Imagawa's response is immediate and professional, a lateral cut aimed at your midsection, while you're committed to the low attack. You can't block it completely, but you manage to get the bell between his blade and your ribs. The bronze rings like a funeral knell as steel meets metal, sending shockwaves up your arm that nearly make you drop your weapon. Impressive technique, he acknowledges, beginning a series of probing cuts designed to test your defences. But you're fighting with religious equipment against a blade forged for war. This can only end one way. His sword work is textbook perfect, economical, precise, and utterly deadly. Each strike comes closer to finding a gap in your unconventional defence. Behind you, the camera completes its work with a soft mechanical click that sounds like salvation. The battle plans are captured, the intelligence secured, and your mission accomplished. Now you just have to survive long enough to deliver it to the network. The window beckons 15 feet away, but Lord Imagawa stands between you and freedom, like a gatekeeper of death. His next attack comes in a combination, a thrust to the body followed immediately by a horizontal cut at neck level. You drop beneath the first strike and roll left to avoid the second, coming up near his writing desk with the temple bell ready for what you know will be your final exchange. "You fight well for a spy," he says, bringing his sword into a high guard position that will let him cut down on any attack you attempt. But courage without wisdom is just elaborate suicide. He's right, of course. You can't defeat an experienced samurai lord in single combat, not with improvised weapons and 6 months of training against his lifetime of warfare. But you don't need to defeat him. You just need to ring one last bell. The temple bell's cord has a hidden feature that Chiyome's artificers built into every one of their modified instruments, a quick release mechanism that turns the entire bell into a thrown weapon. You trigger it while lunging forward in an apparent suicide attack, and the 5-pound bronze bell separates from its striker to become a deadly projectile aimed directly at Lord Imagawa's head. He deflects it with a brilliant display of swordsmanship, his blade connecting with the bell's edge to send it spinning harmlessly into the corner. But the deflection takes his sword out of position for just long enough. You dive through the window in a shower of wooden splinters and broken paper screens, trusting Chiyome's training to get you down the castle wall alive. The temple bell's cord, still clutched in your hand, becomes your lifeline as you rappel into the darkness below. Behind you, Lord Imagawa's shouts wake the entire castle, but you're already disappearing into the maze of back alleys that will carry you to safety. In your sleeve, the camera contains intelligence that will save hundreds of lives and change the course of the war. Around your wrist, bruises from tonight's combat will remind you for weeks that you fought one of Japan's greatest swordsmen and lived to tell about it. Most importantly, tomorrow's intelligence briefing will reach Takeda Shingen with complete battle plans for Imagawa's next offensive, delivered by a simple shrine maiden who learned to turn temple bells into instruments of war. The sound of bronze ringing against steel echoes through the night like a promise. The shadows have learned to bite back. 2 weeks after your escape from Imagawa's castle, you're kneeling in the most dangerous tea house in Kyoto, serving green tea to 3 daimyo who collectively control half of central Japan. Your new cover identity, Miko Sachiko, a renowned tea ceremony master seeking patronage for her temple, required 6 months of additional training in the precise movements and philosophical discussions that mark genuine expertise. Every gesture must be perfect because these men know the difference between authentic ceremony and performance. The intelligence you extracted from Lord Imagawa's study revealed something unprecedented, a secret alliance between 3 rival clans designed to coordinate simultaneous attacks on Takeda territory from different directions. The alliance should be impossible. These daimyo have been enemies for generations, their families bound by blood feuds and territorial disputes. Yet here they sit, sharing tea and planning the destruction of Takeda Shingen with the casual efficiency of merchants discussing seasonal pricing. Your hands perform the ancient ritual of tea preparation with meditative precision, measuring powder, whisking water, and presenting cups with the exact bows required by centuries of tradition. But your ears capture every word of their conversation, and your mind catalogues military strengths, attack timelines, and coordination strategies that will determine whether Takeda land survive the next 3 months. Lord Matsudaira speaks first, his voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to commanding armies. "My forces will move at dawn on the 20th, striking the northern passes before Takeda can reinforce them." He sips his tea with appreciation that seems genuine. Your ceremony training was expensive but thoroughly authentic. The key is preventing them from consolidating their defences. If we attack simultaneously from 3 directions, they'll be forced to fragment their response. Lord Oda nods agreement while studying the teacup's glaze with the focused attention of someone who collects fine ceramics. "My western approach will target their supply lines first, cut their access to coastal trade, then hammer their main positions when they're weakened by shortages." His tactical thinking is sound, and your mental notes grow increasingly grim as you realise how well planned this coordinated assault will be. The third conspirator, Lord Tokugawa, has remained silent during the initial planning, but his contribution chills your blood. "I've secured cooperation from elements within Takeda's own administration. Key officials will delay mobilization orders, misdirect troop movements, and provide intelligence on defensive preparations." He mentions names, samurai you recognize from previous intelligence briefings as trusted Takeda retainers. The betrayal runs deeper than anyone suspected. As you refill their cups with the flowing movements of a master tea ceremony practitioner, you're calculating survival odds for everyone you care about. This isn't just a military assault, it's a comprehensive destruction plan backed by insider intelligence and coordinated by 3 of Japan's most capable military leaders. Without advance warning, Takeda forces will walk into a slaughter that will end their clan's political influence forever. The challenge is getting this intelligence to Chiyome's network without exposing your cover. These daimyo aren't random castle visitors, they're sophisticated political operators who survived decades of intrigue. Any suspicious behaviour will trigger immediate investigation, and you're operating without backup in the heart of enemy territory. Listen to the soft whisper of silk kimono sleeves as 3 of Japan's most dangerous men plan the extermination of your adopted family, while you serve them tea with hands steady as temple stones. Your opportunity comes when Lord Matsudaira requests a private moment to discuss commissioning tea services for an upcoming victory celebration. As the others step into the garden to admire autumn chrysanthemums, you find yourself alone with a man whose forces will be responsible for thousands of deaths unless you can get word to Takeda Shingen. Your technique shows remarkable training, he observes, settling back onto his cushion with the relaxed posture of someone who believes himself completely safe. Tell me, Miko-san, where did you study the way of tea? The question sounds casual, but his eyes carry the calculating intelligence of someone probing for inconsistencies in your cover story. You respond with the memorized biography that Chiyome's forgers crafted with painstaking attention to detail. Training at Daitokuji Temple under Master Rikyu's successor, specialization in the wabi-sabi aesthetic that finds beauty in imperfection, and spiritual devotion that led you to seek patronage for temple restoration rather than personal profit. Every detail is historically accurate and verifiable, because the best cover stories are built on the foundations of truth. Fascinating, he murmurs, though his tone suggests professional interest rather than suspicion. And you travel alone? Unusual for someone of your evident skill and refinement. The probe is delicate but pointed. He's wondering why an accomplished tea master would be operating without the retinue of students and assistants that normally surround such figures. Your answer draws on the most believable truth available: grief. I recently lost my mentor in plague outbreak, Honourable Lord. My travels are partly pilgrimage, partly practical necessity. I must establish new connections if my temple is to survive. The explanation accounts for your solitary status while generating just enough sympathy to discourage further questioning. Lord Matsudaira accepts this with a nod that suggests the topic is closed. But as he prepares to rejoin his co-conspirators in the garden, he drops a casual comment that stops your blood. Cold. Your bell work is particularly impressive, by the way. The rhythm you used during the ceremony, 3 long rings followed by 2 short ones, quite distinctive. That rhythm is a Kunoichi communication code meaning urgent intelligence available. You used it unconsciously while ringing the small bell that announces different phases of the tea ceremony, thinking you were safe because these men couldn't possibly know covert operational signals. Lord Matsudaira's slight smile suggests you were wrong about that assumption. "Enjoy the chrysanthemums, Miko-san," he says, standing with fluid grace despite wearing full samurai regalia. "I suspect we'll have much more to discuss before the evening ends." As he walks toward the garden where his allies wait, you realise that the trap was never about serving tea to conspirators. The real trap was revealing yourself as a Kunoichi agent to 3 daimyo who've been hunting Chiyome's network for months. The wooden tea scoop in your hands suddenly feels very much like a weapon you're going to need. The garden behind the tea house transforms from peaceful sanctuary to deadly arena the moment you step onto its carefully raked gravel paths. Lord Matsudaira and his allies stand arranged in a triangle formation that blocks all 3 exits, their casual postures betraying the tactical awareness of men who've survived countless assassination attempts. They know exactly who you are, and they have been planning this confrontation since before you arrived. "The famous Kunoichi network," Lord Oda observes, his hand resting casually on his sword hilt while he examines a particularly striking chrysanthemum display. "We've heard such fascinating stories about Mochizuki Chiyome's invisible army. Orphan girls trained to seduce state secrets from unsuspecting officials." His tone carries the condescending amusement of someone who believes he's facing an overrated threat. Lord Tokugawa adds his own commentary, while positioning himself near the garden's rear gate. What surprises me is how long it took to identify the pattern. Temple bells ringing in specific sequences, shrine maidens appearing at strategic locations just before military disasters befell our forces. He gestures toward the modified bell hanging from your obi. Did you really think we wouldn't notice? The revelation hits you like cold water. They haven't just discovered one Kunoichi agent. They've identified the entire communication system that allows Chiyome's network to coordinate across multiple provinces. Every bell signal, every coded message, every safe house, and every courier route. They know it all. Which means every sister in the network is walking into the same trap you're facing right now. Your mind races through tactical options while your hands maintain the serene composure expected of a tea ceremony master. The garden offers limited cover. Decorative rocks, sculpted pine trees, and a small meditation pavilion that might provide temporary shelter. Against 3 experienced samurai, your modified temple bell and hidden weapons give you approximately the same chance of survival as a cherry blossom in a typhoon. But surrender isn't an option, because these men don't want information from you. They want to make an example that will terrorize them, the Kunoichi, into abandoning their mission. Your death will be public, prolonged, and designed to send a message that Chiyome's shadow war is finished. The intelligence you stole from Lord Imagawa's castle, Lord Matsudaira continues, beginning to circle your position with the patient predatory movement of a cat approaching a cornered mouse. Quite impressive work, really. Breaking into a secured compound, photographing sensitive documents, and fighting your way out past armed guards. His circling brings him closer with each step, sword still sheathed but ready for instant deployment. Unfortunately, those documents contain deliberate misinformation designed to identify infiltrators. The words hit harder than any physical blow. The battle plans you risked your life to steal and the intelligence you delivered to Takeda Shingen, at enormous personal cost, all of it was carefully crafted disinformation designed to expose Kunoichi agents and their communication methods. Every piece of information in your report was false, and every action Takeda forces took based on that intelligence made them more vulnerable to the real attack being planned. Your network walked directly into a comprehensive counterintelligence operation, Lord Oda explains with the satisfied tone of someone describing a successful business transaction. We've been feeding false information through multiple channels, tracking how it moved through your communication system, and identifying agents and safe houses. He draws his sword with casual efficiency. Tonight, we close the trap on all remaining Kunoichi operatives simultaneously. The synchronized attack on Chiyome's network is happening right now, across a dozen different locations. Your sisters are being arrested, tortured, and executed, all because you delivered intelligence that seemed too good to be true but was actually the perfect bait for a network that had become too confident in its invisibility. Your hand finds the temple bell striker, fingers wrapping around the wooden handle that conceals enough paralytic to drop all 3 opponents if you can deliver precise strikes to the right pressure points. But first, you need to survive long enough to use it, and 3 samurai in an enclosed space represent approximately 3 more opponents than you can handle alone. The chrysanthemum garden suddenly feels less like a place of contemplation and more like an elegant execution ground, designed for the ceremonial destruction of Japan's most effective spy network. Lord Tokugawa draws his blade with the whisper of perfectly maintained steel sliding against a silk-lined scabbard. "Nothing personal, Miko-san, he says, though his smile suggests he's lying about the personal part. You've been remarkably effective adversaries, but effective enemies must be eliminated thoroughly. The 3 swords catch moonlight like silver flames as they begin their final approach, moving with the coordinated precision of predators who've hunted together before. You have perhaps 30 seconds before they close the distance to striking range, 30 seconds to devise a plan that will let you warn the network about the counterintelligence operation, even if you can't survive to deliver the warning personally. The temple bell rings once as you shift into a combat stance, its bronze voice carrying across the night air with a clarity that cuts through autumn's silence like a blade through silk. To the approaching samurai, it's the sound of a trapped Kunoichi preparing for a hopeless battle. To any surviving network agents within hearing range, it's the emergency signal that means abort all operations, network compromised, save yourselves, sometimes the most. Sometimes the important message you can send is the one that tells your family to run. The final battle begins not with sword clashes, but with the soft rustle of silk kimonos as 3 master swordsmen move into killing formation. You're outnumbered and outweighed and fighting with ceremonial equipment against weapons forged specifically for ending human lives. But you have one advantage they can't calculate. Nothing left to lose except the lives of sisters who might still escape if you buy them enough time. Lord Matsudaira attacks first with a diagonal cut designed to separate your head from your shoulders in one clean stroke. You meet his blade with the temple bell's bronze surface, the impact sending shockwaves up your arm, while the distinctive ring carries your final message across the sleeping city. 3 long tolls, 2 short ones, followed by the rapid staccato that means total network compromise run for your lives. The deflection costs you balance but gains precious seconds. You roll left toward the meditation pavilion while Lord Oda's thrust cuts empty air where your torso had been moments before. His follow-up strike comes faster than you expected, forcing you to use the bell's wooden striker as an improvised sword to parry a cut that would have opened your ribs like a flower. Impressive improvisation, Lord Tokugawa acknowledges, while positioning himself to cut off your retreat toward the garden's rear entrance. But we have all night, and you're fighting with religious equipment. His blade work is economical and patient. He knows time favours the side with backup coming. You feint toward the pavilion's support pillar, then pivot to drive the bell's sharpened edge toward Lord Oda's sword arm. The bronze finds its target just below his wrist guard, opening a line of blood that makes him curse creatively, but doesn't slow his attacks. 3 opponents with minor wounds are still 3 opponents with swords. The mathematical precision required becomes almost meditative. Calculate striking distances, anticipate attack angles, and use architectural features for momentary cover while delivering the maximum possible damage with each engagement. Your temple bell becomes an extension of your will, its bronze voice ringing out the complex rhythms that turn a garden battle into a broadcast message. Lord Matsudaira's next assault comes as a combination, thrust to the body followed immediately by a rising cut designed to catch you if you dodge low. You drop beneath the first attack and slide right to avoid the second, coming up behind the meditation pavilion's corner post with the bell ready for what you know will be your final exchange. You fight well for someone using improvised weapons, he acknowledges, bringing his sword into the high guard position that will let him cut down on any attack you attempt. But this performance has gone on long enough. His blade shifts to a stance you recognise from intelligence briefings, the position Master Swordsmen adopt just before delivering killing strokes. The end comes with surprising speed. Lord Oda flanks left while Lord Tokugawa moves right, their coordinated advance designed to overwhelm your defences through sheer mathematical superiority. You can block 1 blade, maybe deflect a second, but the third will find its mark regardless of your skill or desperation. But as the 3 swords descend in perfect synchronization, the garden fills with an unexpected sound. Temple bells ringing from every direction, their bronze voices carrying the same emergency pattern you've been broadcasting. Near and distant, loud and soft, the bells of Kyoto sing out the warning that will save every surviving Kunoichi agent in the network. Your sisters heard your message. They're spreading it through every communication channel available, turning your final battle into a citywide evacuation signal that reaches agents you didn't even know existed. The counterintelligence operation that was supposed to destroy Chiyome's network in one coordinated strike has become the catalyst for its most successful. The counterintelligence operation that was supposed to destroy Chiyome's network in one coordinated strike has become the catalyst for its most successful evacuation in history. The 3 lords hesitate for a crucial moment, their perfect formation disrupted by the symphony of bronze voices echoing across Kyoto. In that moment of confusion, you strike with everything you have left. The temple bell swinging in a final arc that catches Lord Matsudaira across the temple, the wooden striker finding Lord Oda's throat, and your last breath used to scream the evacuation signal one more time. You don't survive the chrysanthemum garden, but neither do all 3 of your would-be executioners, and more importantly, neither does their carefully planned network destruction. By dawn, every Kunoichi agent within 50 miles has vanished like morning mist, taking with them the knowledge that will keep Chiyome's shadow war alive for years to come. Your temple bell rings one last time as it falls from your lifeless fingers, its bronze voice carrying across the sleeping city, like a promise that some wars are fought in darkness and some victories are paid for in blood. 2 months after the Chrysanthemum Garden Massacre, you're no longer the tea-serving Miko who died fighting 3 daimyo lords. You're Miko Hanako, a new agent who emerged from the mountain villages where Chiyome's network has been rebuilding itself like a phoenix, constructing its nest from the ashes of its predecessor. The evacuation signal you died to broadcast saved over 200 Kunoichi agents, and now they're returning to the field with hard-earned wisdom about the price of overconfidence. Your new assignment takes you to the port city of Shimbad, where foreign black ships have begun arriving with increasing frequency. The political landscape has shifted dramatically. No longer are you simply gathering intelligence on Japanese daimyo fighting each other. Now you're monitoring the arrival of pale-skinned strangers whose weapons can sink entire fleets, and whose demands threaten to reshape Japan's relationship with the outside world. The modified temple bell hanging from your obi represents the network's evolution. Where previous bells contained hidden compartments for documents and poison, yours incorporates a new innovation, a small mechanism that can record and replay sounds with startling fidelity. Chiyome's artificers developed this after realizing that foreign languages require different intelligence-gathering techniques than Japanese dialects. You can now capture entire conversations in Portuguese or Dutch, then replay them later for translation by network linguists. Your cover identity has also evolved. Rather than posing as a simple travelling Miko, you're now Hanako-san, a shrine maiden who specialises in purification rituals for sailors returning from long voyages. This gives you legitimate reason to board foreign ships, interact with their crews, and observe their cargo while performing religious ceremonies that the foreigners view as exotic local customs. They have no idea you're memorising every detail of their weapons, mapping their ship layouts, and identifying which officers make the important decisions. The first foreign vessel you board is a Portuguese trading ship whose captain speaks broken Japanese and carries himself with the arrogance of someone accustomed to intimidating locals through superior firepower. He agrees to let you perform purification rituals for his crew, partly out of curiosity, and partly because his men have been suffering from a mysterious illness that Japanese medicine might cure. What he doesn't realise is that your purification involves ringing your temple bell in specific patterns that will later allow network agents to identify this particular ship and its cargo manifest. As you move through the ship's lower decks, supposedly blessing the areas where sick sailors rest, you're actually conducting the most sophisticated intelligence operation in Kunoichi history. Your bell's recording mechanism captures conversations between officers discussing trade routes, military capabilities, and political negotiations with Japanese officials. The purification incense you burn contains compounds that will allow other network agents to track this ship's movements through scent markers that linger for weeks. The Portuguese captain watches you work with bemused tolerance, occasionally asking questions about Japanese spiritual practices that you answer with carefully crafted misinformation designed to reinforce their assumptions about Japanese superstition and technological backwardness. The spirits of the sea must be honoured, you explain while secretly photographing their cannon placement, or they will bring storms and misfortune to those who travel these waters. He nods patronisingly, not realising he's just provided detailed intelligence about his ship's defensive capabilities to Japan's most effective spy network. But the real revelation comes when you overhear a private conversation between the captain and his first mate about the woman in Edo who knows our plans. They're referring to someone within the Japanese government who's been providing intelligence about Japanese defences, trade negotiations, and political divisions. The betrayal runs deeper than anyone suspected. There's a high-level Japanese official selling state secrets to foreign powers, and your mission just became exponentially more complex. As you complete your purification ritual and prepare to disembark, the temple bell's soft chiming carries a message that will reshape Chiyome's entire operation. The threat to Japan doesn't come just from foreign military power. It comes from Japanese collaborators who are willing to trade their country's independence for personal profit. The network that once focused on domestic power struggles between daimyo must now confront an entirely new form of warfare. One where the enemy includes both foreign invaders and Japanese traitors, and where temple bells must learn to ring with the sound of approaching apocalypse. Your intelligence about Japanese collaborators leads to the most audacious Kunoichi operation in the network's history, infiltrating the highest levels of the Tokugawa shogunate to identify which officials are selling state secrets to foreign powers. The mission requires you to abandon your Miko cover and assume the identity of Lady Sachiko, a minor court noble seeking an advantageous marriage to a government official. The transformation requires 6 months of intensive training in court etiquette, classical poetry, and the subtle art of political manipulation. The Edo court during the arrival of foreign black ships is a pressure cooker of fear, ambition, and desperation. Ancient traditions clash with the modern realities as officials struggle to respond to foreign demands while maintaining their own power and prestige. Your target is Hayashi Daizen, a senior advisor to the shogun whose sudden wealth and confident predictions about foreign intentions suggest he's receiving intelligence from external sources. Getting close to him requires navigating a social hierarchy where one wrong word or improper bow can end your mission permanently. Your weapon in this environment isn't a temple bell, it's a koto, a traditional Japanese stringed instrument that allows you to attend court musical performances while concealing a sophisticated listening device within its wooden body. The instrument's strings have been modified to vibrate at frequencies that can pick up conversations from across large rooms, and its sound holes contain tiny recording mechanisms that capture everything within a 30-foot radius. To observers, you're Lady Sachiko practicing her musical skills. To the network, you're operating the most advanced surveillance equipment in 16th century Japan. The breakthrough comes during a moon viewing party where court officials gather to compose poetry and discuss current events in this carefully coded language of political discourse. Hayashi Daizen, slightly drunk on plum wine and emboldened by his recent successes, begins bragging about his ability to predict foreign behaviour. The Portuguese will demand exclusive trading rights in Nagasaki, he announces to a small group of listeners, and when they do, those who prepared properly will profit enormously. Your koto strings vibrate with perfect clarity as they capture his next words. My sources among the foreign captains have been most generous with information. They understand that cooperation benefits everyone involved. The admission is devastating. Not only is he receiving intelligence from foreign agents, but he's actively coordinating with them to manipulate Japanese policy for mutual profit. But the real shock comes when he mentions his contact within the Kunoichi network itself. Even the legendary Chiyome's spies aren't immune to proper incentives, he says with the smug satisfaction of someone who believes he's outsmarted Japan's most sophisticated intelligence operation. One of her agents has been providing me with details about their operations, safe houses, and communication methods. He takes another sip of plum wine before delivering the coup de grace. She'll be at tomorrow's tea ceremony, actually. Such a charming girl, despite her profession. The betrayal hits you like a physical blow. Someone within your own network, a sister who trained beside you, fought alongside you and trusted you with her life, has been selling information to the enemy. The counterintelligence operation that nearly destroyed the network wasn't just based on captured communications or intercepted messages. It was orchestrated by someone with intimate knowledge of Kunoichi training methods, safe houses, and operational procedures. Your hands continue playing the koto with mechanical precision while your mind races through the implications. Every mission briefing, every safe house location, every communication protocol, all of it potentially compromised by someone who shares your training, your history, and your oath to protect Japan from its enemies. The music you're playing sounds like a funeral dirge, which seems appropriate given that you're about to attend the execution of your own network. As the moon viewing party continues around you, with court officials composing elaborate verses about autumn leaves and the transient nature of beauty, you realise you're facing a different kind of war entirely. This isn't just about foreign invaders or domestic power struggles. This is about the fundamental question of what it means to be loyal to Japan, when Japan itself is changing beyond recognition. The koto strings capture every word of Hayashi Daizen's conversation, building a case that will allow the network to neutralise both the foreign collaboration and the internal betrayal. But first, you have to survive tomorrow's tea ceremony, where you'll come face to face with the Kunoichi, who sold her sisters for foreign gold. Your temple bell may have learned to ring with new technologies, but some sounds never change. The hollow bronze tone of approaching betrayal, and the sharp silver note of justice demanding payment in blood. The morning of the tea ceremony arrives with unseasonable rain, the kind that makes temple bells ring with muffled ominous tones as water drips from their bronze surfaces. You're dressed in the elaborate silk kimono of Lady Sachiko, but beneath the elegant facade you carry enough hidden weapons to equip a small army. Today isn't just about gathering intelligence. It's about confronting the Kunoichi who betrayed 300 sisters to foreign collaborators and domestic traitors. The tea house where Hayashi Daizen hosts his weekly gatherings overlooks a perfectly manicured garden where autumn chrysanthemums bloom in defiance of the rain. The setting should be peaceful and meditative, a place where the ancient art of tea ceremony creates harmony between participants. Instead, it feels like an execution ground disguised as a cultural event, where every bow and gesture carries the weight of life and death decisions. You recognise the traitor the moment she enters, Miko Yuki, one of your fellow graduates from Chiyome's original compound. She moves with the same trained grace you remember from combat practice, bows with the precise angles learned in etiquette lessons, and carries herself with the confidence of someone who believes she's successfully navigated an impossible situation. What she doesn't realise is that her former sisters have been hunting her for months, and today's tea ceremony represents the end of a very patient pursuit. The formal ritual begins with the host's welcome, Hayashi Daizen's carefully modulated voice explaining the philosophical principles behind the way of tea, while his eyes constantly assess the political value of each guest. You perform your role as Lady Sachiko flawlessly, the slightly naive court noble seeking to expand her cultural understanding while remaining appropriately deferential to more experienced participants. Your kotatsu, positioned discreetly beside your seating cushion, records every nuance of conversation. Yuki's performance is equally flawless, but you know her tells, the slight tension in her left shoulder when she's lying, the way her breathing changes when she's calculating advantages, and the micro-expression that crosses her face when she's preparing to strike. She's positioned herself strategically near the tea house's rear entrance, ready to flee if the situation deteriorates. What she hasn't noticed is that the garden outside is now occupied by 3 other Kunoichi agents who graduated from different training classes. The confrontation begins subtly, embedded within the formal conversation about seasonal poetry and aesthetic philosophy. You recite a verse about autumn leaves falling, but the specific words and a rhythm constitute a coded challenge that only network agents would recognize. Yuki's response, disguised as literary criticism, contains defensive justifications and veiled threats. To the other guests, you're having an elevated discussion about classical literature. To each other, you're negotiating the terms of what will probably be a fight to the death. Hayashi Daizen, oblivious to the subtext, attempts to guide the conversation toward more practical matters, recent developments in foreign trade negotiations, speculation about shogunate policy changes, and the curious effectiveness of certain intelligence sources. His casual mention of recent insights from our Miko friends causes Yuki to tense visibly, the first crack in her professional composure. The tea ceremony continues through its prescribed phases, the ritual cleaning of utensils, the precise preparation of matcha powder, and the formal presentation of tea bowls that have been family treasures for generations. But underneath the ancient choreography, 2 Kunoichi agents are preparing for a confrontation that will determine whether Chiyome's network survives its greatest internal crisis. The other guests sip their tea and compose poetry while sitting 3 feet away from a shadow war that could reshape Japan's response to foreign intervention. Your moment comes during the formal appreciation of the tea bowl's craftsmanship, when guests traditionally examine the ceramic work while offering compliments to the host. As Yuki lifts her bowl to study its glaze pattern, you notice the small scar on her wrist, the mark left by a training accident during bell combat practice at Chiyome's compound. It's the final confirmation of her identity, and the trigger for justice that's been delayed far too long. The temple bell hidden within your koto begins to chime with the pattern that means network compromised, execute traitor, its bronze voice, carrying across the rain-soaked garden to alert the agents positioned outside. Yuki's eyes widen as she recognizes the signal. Her former sisters have found her, and there's nowhere left to run. As tea ceremony guests continue their polite conversation about aesthetic principles and seasonal beauty, 2 of Japan's deadliest female warriors prepare to settle accounts with methods that Mochizuki Chiyome would have recognized and approved. Swift, silent, and absolutely final. The last sound Hayashi Daizen hears before the world changes forever is the gentle ring of a temple bell calling his foreign collaboration to judgment. The tea ceremony explodes into violence with the soft whisper of silk kimono sleeves concealing the deadly blur of hidden weapons. Yuki moves first, her tea bowl transforming into a projectile aimed at your throat, while her other hand produces a tanto blade from somewhere within her elaborate obi sash. You deflect the ceramic missile with your koto's neck, the instrument's modified strings singing with a discordant note that masks the sound of your own weapon deployment, a hairpin that extends into a full-length dagger with the press of a concealed mechanism. The other tea ceremony guests scatter, like startled sparrows, their aesthetic discussions forgotten, as two women in expensive silk try to kill each other with implements that were disguised as fashion accessories moments earlier. Hayashi Daizen scrambles toward the garden entrance, shouting orders to guards who are already engaged in their own desperate battles against Kunoichi agents who materialize from the chrysanthemum beds like deadly flowers blooming in reverse. Yuki's blade work shows the same precise techniques you learned at Chiyome's compound, but there's a desperate edge to her attacks that speaks of someone fighting for her life rather than her principles. "You don't understand the larger game," she hisses, while attempting a thrust designed to puncture your lung. "Japan needs allies, not isolation. The foreigners will conquer us with or without help. I chose to survive." Her political justification doesn't slow her blade speed, but it reveals the rationalization that allowed her to betray 300 sisters for foreign gold. Your response comes in the form of combat rather than conversation, a series of attacks that force her backward toward the garden's central water feature, where the sound of artificial streams will mask the noise of your final confrontation. The tea house's wooden floors, polished to mirror brightness, become treacherous footing as you both maneuver for advantage while trying not to slip on scattered tea implements and broken ceramic fragments. The koto, still recording despite the chaos, captures every word of Yuki's desperate attempts to justify her betrayal. "The network was doomed anyway," she pants while parrying a strike aimed at her carotid artery. "Chiyome's methods are obsolete. Modern warfare requires modern alliances." She punctuates this observation with a vicious cut that would have opened your ribcage if not for the steel stay sewn into your kimono's undergarment. Another innovation born from hard experience with betrayal. Around you, the tea house transforms into a battlefield where aesthetic principles clash with lethal reality. Ancient scroll paintings observe impassively as women trained in the art of invisible death settle philosophical differences with sharpened steel. The rain continues to fall on the garden outside, where other Kunoichi are systematically eliminating Hayashi Daizen's security forces with the efficient brutality that made Chiyome's network legendary. Your counterattack drives Yuki through the tea house's paper screens, the delicate barriers offering no resistance to bodies locked in mortal combat. You tumble together into the garden's gravel paths, expensive silk kimono becoming muddy and torn as the fight shifts from refined indoor positioning to desperate outdoor grappling. The autumn chrysanthemums, cultivated for their perfect beauty, are trampled beneath feet seeking purchase for killing blows. Yuki's final gambit involves a hidden poison dart concealed in her hair ornaments, a weapon you recognize from advanced training that was supposedly reserved for the network's most trusted agents. The irony isn't lost on you as you dodge the projectile by millimeters. She's using Kunoichi techniques to kill a Kunoichi, proving that some betrayals are more complete than others. The dart embeds itself in a wooden fence post, its tip glistening with toxins that would have killed you in seconds. Your response is immediate and final. The hairpin dagger finds the gap between her ribs with the precision of someone who memorized human anatomy during medical training at Chiyome's compound. Yuki's eyes widen with the recognition that comes to all warriors in their final moments, understanding that death was always the most likely outcome of the choices that brought her to this rain-soaked garden. As she falls among the chrysanthemums she helped trample, her last words are barely audible above the rain. The foreigners will still come. The network can't stop what's already inevitable. She's probably right about the historical forces reshaping Japan, but she's wrong about one crucial detail. The network isn't trying to stop history. It's trying to ensure that Japan shapes its own destiny, rather than having it dictated by foreign powers and domestic collaborators. The garden falls silent except for the sound of rain on bronze temple bells, their metal surfaces singing with the complex harmonies that announce both endings and beginnings. Hayashi Daizen lies motionless beside his ruined tea house, his collaboration with foreign powers terminated by agents who learn to serve their country in the shadows between loyalty and treason. The intelligence you extracted from Hayashi Daizen's tea house leads to the most dangerous mission in Kunoichi history, infiltrating Edo Castle itself to prevent a secret agreement that would place Japan under foreign protection in exchange for the shogun maintaining nominal authority. The documents recovered from the traitor's compound reveal negotiations so advanced that signatures are scheduled for the next new moon, less than 2 weeks away. Your cover for this impossible mission is audacious in its simplicity. Your Miko Hanako, a shrine maiden summoned to perform purification rituals for the shogun's ailing mother, whose mysterious illness has resisted all conventional treatments. The shogun's desperation to save his mother provides your entry point into the most heavily guarded compound in Japan, but it also places you under the scrutiny of physicians, court officials, and security forces who would execute you instantly if your true identity were discovered. The modified temple bell you carry into Edo Castle represents the pinnacle of Kunoichi technological innovation. Its bronze surface conceals a recording device capable of capturing conversations through stone walls, while its wooden striker contains enough concentrated poison to kill everyone in a large room, if deployed through the ventilation system. Most importantly, its sound frequency has been precisely calibrated to trigger a massive coordinated uprising if rung in the specific pattern that signals national emergency, begin final operations. The castle itself is a maze of defensive architecture designed to confuse and delay any potential attackers. Corridors branch into dead ends, staircases lead to rooms that can be sealed shut, and every approach to the shogun's quarters is monitored by guards who would rather commit seppuku than allow an unauthorized person to pass. Your advantage lies in moving through areas designated for religious personnel, spaces that even paranoid security forces hesitate to scrutinize too closely out of fear of offending the spirits. The shogun's mother, when you finally reach her chambers, is indeed dying. Not from any exotic poison or foreign disease, but from the simple despair of watching her son prepare to surrender Japan's independence to avoid the destruction that foreign cannons could bring to his capital. Your purification ritual involves hours of prayer, incense burning and bell ringing that disguise the most sophisticated intelligence-gathering operation ever conducted within the shogun's private quarters. Through the thin walls of the medical chambers, your bell's recording mechanism captures fragments of the secret negotiations, foreign demands for exclusive trading rights, territorial concessions that would place Japanese ports under foreign control, and military agreements that would effectively reduce the shogun to a puppet ruler managing domestic affairs while foreign powers controlled international policy. The scope of the proposed capitulation is breathtaking, not just submission, but willing collaboration in Japan's transformation into a client state. The crucial intelligence comes from an overheard conversation between the shogun and his chief negotiator, a man whose Dutch language skills and foreign contacts have made him indispensable to the surrender process. The Americans promised to protect us from other foreign powers, the negotiator explains, but protection requires permanent bases for their naval forces and guaranteed access to Japanese resources. The shogun's response chills your blood. If we must choose between independence and survival, I choose survival. My ancestors would understand. But the conversation also reveals the agreement's greatest vulnerability. It requires the shogun's personal seal on documents that must be delivered to foreign representatives at a specific time and location. The ceremony is scheduled for midnight on the new moon, at a temporary pavilion constructed in the castle's inner gardens specifically for the signing. If the documents aren't delivered exactly as negotiated, the entire agreement collapses, and Japan gains precious time to prepare alternative responses to foreign pressure. Your exit from the castle proves more dangerous than your entry, as increased security measures have been implemented in response to recent intelligence concerns, probably the result of your network's previous operations against foreign collaborators. Guards who were casual during your arrival now scrutinize every detail of your departure, examining your religious implements with suspicion that borders on paranoia. The temple bell that contains evidence of the shogun's planned surrender could expose not just your mission, but the entire Kunoichi network if discovered. The escape requires using every trick Chiyome's training provided. Misdirection techniques that make guards look away at crucial moments, breathing methods that slow your heartbeat during close inspection, and the psychological manipulation that transforms suspicion into protective concern. By the time you pass through the castle's outermost gates, The guards believe they've thoroughly examined a deeply devout Miko whose only concerns are spiritual purification and her elderly mother's declining health. As you disappear into Edo's labyrinthine streets, the temple bell hidden beneath your travel robes contains intelligence that will reshape Japan's response to foreign intervention. But more importantly, it carries the sound frequency that will trigger coordinated Kunoichi operations across the entire country. Operations designed to ensure that the Shogun's secret surrender never reaches its intended recipients. The new moon that was supposed to witness Japan's capitulation will instead illuminate the night when Chiyome's network plays its final, most desperate gambit to preserve their country's independence. The new moon rises over Edo Castle like a dark promise, its absence of light providing perfect cover for the most audacious Kunoichi operation in Japanese history. You're positioned in the castle's inner garden, concealed among decorative rocks that were placed precisely to create hiding spots for guards, but now shelter the agent tasked with preventing Japan's surrender to foreign powers. The temporary pavilion where the shogun will sign away his country's independence sits 30 yards away, illuminated by paper lanterns that cast dancing shadows across the formal agreements that will reduce Japan to a client state. Your temple bell hangs silent at your side, its bronze surface reflecting starlight like captured moonbeams. But this silence is deceptive. Within its metal body, the recording mechanism has been replaced with something far more dangerous. A resonance device capable of producing sound frequencies that will shatter glass, disrupt human hearing, and most importantly trigger similar devices hidden throughout Edo by Kunoichi agents who spent months preparing for this moment. The shogun arrives at midnight exactly, accompanied by a small retinue of officials whose expressions suggest they understand the historical magnitude of what they are about to witness. His foreign counterparts, American naval officers whose black uniforms match the moonless sky, wait beside a table laden with documents that represent the culmination of months of secret negotiations. The scene has been choreographed with ceremonial precision, transforming national surrender into an event that resembles a traditional diplomatic ceremony. Your position allows you to hear every word of the final negotiations, as the shogun's translator ensures that both parties understand the agreement's implications. Japan will maintain internal autonomy, the American commander explains through an interpreter, while accepting foreign guidance on international affairs and trade relationships. The euphemism disguises the reality. Japan will govern its own villages while foreign powers control its destiny. But as the shogun reaches for the brush that will seal his country's fate, the temple bells of Edo begin to ring. Not the normal evening chimes that mark prayer times or changing hours. This is the coordinated cacophony of every Kunoichi agent in the city simultaneously triggering their acoustic weapons in a symphony of resistance that turns the night into a bronze-voiced rebellion against surrender. The resonance builds like an approaching earthquake, temple bells from dozens of locations combining their voices into a frequency that makes the pavilion's paper walls vibrate, and the foreign officers clutch their ears in pain. The carefully arranged documents scatter in the wind generated by sound waves, while the shogun's ceremonial brush falls from hands that shake with acoustic disruption rather than political resolve. Your own bell joins the chorus as you emerge from concealment, its bronze voice, adding the final harmonic that transforms the garden's acoustic environment into something approaching a weapon of mass destruction. The foreign officers, trained for naval combat but unprepared for siege warfare conducted through coordinated sound, retreat toward their armed guards while shouting orders that can't be heard above the metallic screaming that fills the night air. The shogun, caught between his planned surrender and a rebellion he never suspected existed, stumbles toward the pavilion's exit while his retainers attempt to shield him from sound waves that seem to emanate from every direction simultaneously. The formal ceremony designed to transfer Japan's independence to foreign protection has become a chaos of scattered papers, overturned furniture, and officials fleeing in terror from an invisible army that fights with bronze bells instead of steel swords. But the real victory isn't the disruption of the signing ceremony, it's the message being broadcast to every Kunoichi agent across Japan through harmonic frequencies that carry specific coded instructions. The bells ringing throughout Edo are announcing the beginning of coordinated operations designed to eliminate every foreign collaborator, disrupt every secret negotiation, and ensure that Japan's response to foreign pressure comes from Japanese decisions rather than foreign dictates. As the acoustic assault continues, you notice something that makes your heart soar with pride. ordinary citizens emerging from their homes to ring their own bells, gongs, and metal implements in support of the coordinated resistance. The Kunoichi operation has triggered a spontaneous popular uprising against surrender, transforming Chiyome's shadow war into a national rejection of foreign control. The foreign officers finally retreat to their ships, carrying reports of a country that appears to have gone collectively insane with the sound of rebellion. The shogun returns to his castle with unsigned documents and the growing realization that his subjects will not accept foreign domination without a fight that makes the night ring with the sound of bronze bells calling Japan to defend itself. As dawn breaks over Edo, the temple bells finally fall silent, but their message has been heard across the entire country. The network that began with orphaned girls learning to fight with temple-in bells has evolved into a national movement that chose resistance over surrender, independence over safety, and the uncertain future of freedom over the guaranteed servitude of foreign protection. 6 months after the night Edo's bells sang rebellion into existence, you stand in the mountain village of Neizu, where everything began, watching Mochizuki Chiyome train a new generation of Kunoichi with methods that have evolved far beyond her original techniques. The woman who created Japan's most effective spy network from orphaned girls and temple bells has returned from historical obscurity to witness her revolution's ultimate success, the transformation of invisible warfare into national resistance. The compound has expanded dramatically since your first training days, where once 30 girls learned to fight with bronze bells, now over 200 agents practice techniques that blend traditional Kunoichi methods with innovations born from confronting foreign invasion and domestic betrayal. The sound of temple bells rings constantly across the training grounds, but these bells carry new technologies, acoustic weapons, recording devices, and communication systems that turn ancient religious instruments into tools of modern espionage. Chiyome herself has aged gracefully into the role of grandmother to a movement that extends far beyond her original network. Her silver hair and lined face speak of years spent perfecting the art of turning society's discarded women into instruments of political change. But her eyes retain the sharp intelligence that recognized how orphaned girls could become Japan's salvation when traditional warriors proved inadequate to defend against threats they couldn't see or understand. "You've exceeded my expectations," she tells you, during a private conversation in her personal quarters, where the walls are decorated with weapons disguised as religious artifacts, and maps that show Kunoichi operations extending from Hokkaido to Kyushu. When I first created this network, I imagined we would gather intelligence and conduct sabotage for perhaps a decade before the changing world made our methods obsolete. Instead, you've proven that adaptation preserves effectiveness better than tradition preserves honor. Your own role has evolved from field agent to instructor, teaching newcomers how to transform temple bells into weapons, while understanding that the real revolution isn't technological, it's psychological. The young women arriving at the compound now come not just as refugees from war and poverty, but as volunteers who've heard stories of the Kunoichi, and chosen to join a movement that offers them the chance to serve something larger than survival. The training methods you teach incorporate lessons learned from confronting foreign espionage, domestic betrayal, and the challenge of maintaining operational security when your network's reputation has made discretion more difficult. New students learn not just how to hide weapons in religious artifacts, but also how to blend traditional Japanese identity with the practical requirements of intelligence work in an era when Japan's relationship with the outside world grows more complex daily. The temple bells used in training now serve multiple functions simultaneously: weapons, communication devices, recording equipment, and psychological warfare tools that can disrupt enemy operations through coordinated acoustic assault. But beneath all these innovations, the bells retain their original spiritual significance. They are still instruments of prayer, meditation, and connection to traditions that define Japanese identity, even as external pressures threaten to reshape that identity beyond recognition. Today's lesson involves teaching new students how to read the bronze inscriptions on temple bells, not for their religious meaning, but for the coded intelligence messages that Kunoichi artificers now embed in the casting process. Each bell carries information about safe house locations, enemy agent identifications, and operational procedures that allow the network to function even when traditional communication channels are compromised. The bells have become a library written in bronze, preserving knowledge that ensures the network's survival across generations. But the most important lesson isn't technical, it's philosophical. Remember, you tell the assembled students as they practice bell combat techniques into the afternoon sunlight. We fight not because we enjoy violence, but because we choose to determine Japan's future, rather than having it determined for us. Every swing of your bell, every coded message you transmit, and every enemy agent you neutralize serves the principle that Japan belongs to the Japanese. The response comes in the form of synchronized bell ringing that creates harmonics complex enough to shatter glass and beautiful enough to serve as music for temple ceremonies. These young women understand that they're learning to be more than spies or assassins. They're becoming guardians of Japanese independence in an era when independence requires constant vigilance against threats both foreign and domestic. As evening falls over the training compound, the sound of temple bells calling students to dinner carries across mountain valleys that have witnessed the transformation of feudal espionage into national resistance. Mochizuki Chiyome's experiment in turning social outcasts to Borusto into instruments of political power has succeeded beyond her wildest imagination, creating a movement that will influence Japanese history for generations to come. The morning briefing takes place in Chiyome's private study, where intelligence reports from across Japan paint a picture of a country in transition between isolation and engagement with an increasingly interconnected world. The foreign threat that once seemed focused on the military conquest has evolved into something more complex: economic penetration, cultural influence, and political manipulation that requires entirely new forms of resistance. Your assignment reflects this evolution. Rather than gathering intelligence on domestic rivals or preventing military invasions, you're now tasked with monitoring and countering foreign attempts to establish permanent influence networks within Japanese society. The enemy isn't soldiers or spies in the traditional sense. It's merchants, missionaries, and advisors who work to reshape Japanese institutions from within while maintaining facades of friendship and mutual benefit. The modified temple bell you carry represents years of technological development driven by operational necessity. Its bronze surface conceals electromagnetic sensors that can detect foreign communication equipment, while its internal chambers house chemical analysis tools capable of identifying foreign poisons, medicines, and other substances that might be used to influence Japanese officials. Most importantly, its sound frequency can now disrupt foreign electronic devices, a capability that seemed impossible when your training began but has become essential as foreign technology advances. Your first target is a Christian mission in Nagasaki where Portuguese priests have established what appears to be a religious school, but actually functions as an intelligence collection centre and recruitment facility for Japanese collaborators. The missionaries present themselves as purely spiritual figures concerned with Japanese souls, but intelligence gathered by other network agents suggests they're systematically mapping Japanese social structures and identifying individuals who might be persuaded to support foreign interests. The mission's approach requires delicate balance between gathering intelligence and maintaining your cover as Miko Hanako, a shrine maiden interested in comparative religious studies. Your conversations with the Portuguese priests must seem like genuine theological curiosity, while actually probing for information about their true activities, funding sources, and connections to foreign political authorities. One wrong question or inconsistent response could expose not just your mission, but the entire network's operations in southern Japan. Father Rodriguez, the mission's senior priest, proves to be both more intelligent and more dangerous than anticipated. His Japanese language skills are excellent, his understanding of Japanese culture surprisingly deep, and his ability to read people suggests training that goes well beyond theological education. During your first meeting, disguised as a friendly discussion about Christian philosophy, he asks probing questions about your temple affiliations, travel history, and reasons for interest in foreign religion that indicate suspicion about your true identity. Your questions show remarkable sophistication for someone from a rural shrine, he observes, while pouring tea with movements that suggest familiarity with Japanese customs that could only come from years of careful study. Tell me, Miko-san, what specific aspects of Christian doctrine interest you most? Perhaps we could arrange for you to observe our educational methods firsthand. The invitation sounds innocent, but feels like a trap designed to place you under closer scrutiny. Your response draws on months of preparation. You're fascinated by Christian concepts of redemption and forgiveness, particularly as they might apply to individuals who've committed acts they regret in service of higher causes. The theological framework provides perfect cover for probing questions about how the mission handles former samurai, displaced merchants, and the Japanese, whose traditional roles have been disrupted by social change. These are exactly the demographics that foreign intelligence networks would target for recruitment. The conversation reveals disturbing intelligence about the mission's true scope. Father Rodriguez mentions spiritual guidance provided to Japanese officials dealing with foreign policy decisions, educational opportunities offered to the sons of influential families, and charitable assistance delivered to individuals whose cooperation might benefit future foreign interests. The mission isn't just collecting intelligence. It's systematically building networks of obligation and influence that could be activated during future political crises. But the most dangerous revelation comes when he mentions our sister organization in Edo, a reference that suggests coordinated foreign operations extending far beyond religious activities. The Portuguese mission in Nagasaki appears to be part of a comprehensive intelligence network that includes multiple cover organizations, all working to prepare Japan for eventual foreign dominance through gradual internal penetration rather than military conquest. As your meeting concludes with Father Rodriguez's invitation to return for deeper theological discussions, the temple bell hidden beneath your travel robes records his final comment. Japan's future will be determined by those wise enough to recognize that isolation is no longer possible. We hope to help guide that recognition in directions that benefit everyone involved. The euphemism disguises an ultimatum. Cooperate with foreign interests or face the consequences of continued resistance. Your escape from the mission compound requires careful performance of someone genuinely interested in comparative religion, but ultimately committed to traditional Japanese spiritual practices. Father Rodriguez watches your departure with eyes that suggest he's already planning your next encounter, probably under circumstances where his questions will be harder to deflect and your answers will be more difficult to fabricate. As you disappear into Nagasaki's crowded streets, the intelligence you've gathered confirms the network's worst fears. The foreign threat has evolved beyond military invasion to comprehensive cultural and political infiltration designed to make Japanese resistance impossible through a combination of obligation, dependency, and gradual erosion of traditional institutions. The Kunoichi must evolve once again, this time to fight a war where the enemy uses kindness as a weapon and salvation as a trap. The final confrontation comes not in a garden battle or castle infiltration, but in the most unexpected location possible. A simple village temple where you've been summoned to perform what appears to be a routine purification ceremony for a community preparing for its autumn festival. The request arrives through normal channels, carried by a travelling monk whose credentials appear authentic and whose manner suggests nothing more dangerous than spiritual bureaucracy. But the temple bell that hangs in the village shrine has been modified by foreign agents, not with obvious technological additions, but with subtle alterations to its bronze composition that will allow it to serve as a massive acoustic transmitter when activated by specific sound frequencies. The plot represents foreign intelligence at its most sophisticated, turning Japan's own spiritual instruments into weapons of psychological warfare that could trigger nationwide panic if deployed during the religious festivals when millions of Japanese gather to hear temple bells ring. Your discovery of the modification comes through the electromagnetic sensors concealed in your own temple bell, devices that detect the unusual metallic signatures created by foreign additives in the shrine bell's bronze structure. The readings indicate that this isn't an isolated incident. Similar modifications have been detected at temples across Japan, all of them sites where large crowds gather during religious ceremonies. The scope suggests a coordinated operation designed to demonstrate foreign technological superiority, while psychological conditioning Japanese citizens to associate their most sacred traditions with vulnerability. The village priest, when you question him about recent maintenance work on the temple bell, reveals information that confirms your worst suspicions. Such generous foreign friends, he explains with the innocent gratitude of someone who doesn't recognize manipulation. The Portuguese merchants insisted on paying for bronze restoration as a gesture of respect for Japanese spiritual traditions. They said it was important that the bell's voice carry clearly across the valley during our ceremonies. The technical analysis you conduct during your purification ritual reveals the full scope of the threat. The modified bronze contains compounds that will resonate at specific frequencies, potentially loud enough to cause hearing damage or even death if triggered, while people are standing close to the bell. But the real purpose appears to be psychological, demonstrating that foreign powers can reach into Japan's most sacred spaces and corrupt them without detection, proving that no aspect of Japanese life is beyond foreign influence. Your response requires the most delicate operation in Kunoichi history, neutralizing the acoustic weapon while maintaining the appearance of conducting a normal religious ceremony in full view of village residents who would panic if they understood the danger hidden in their temple bell. The solution involves using your own modified bell to generate counter frequencies that will neutralize the foreign additives without creating obvious signs of tampering. The process takes hours of careful work disguised as an elaborate purification ritual that involves extensive bell ringing, incense burning, and prayers that actually constitute coded instructions to other network agents positioned throughout the village. To the assembled villagers, you're performing an unusually thorough spiritual cleansing in preparation for their autumn festival. To the Kunoichi monitoring from concealed positions, you're conducting the most sophisticated counterintelligence operation in the network's history. The breakthrough comes when your counter-frequency successfully neutralizes the foreign additives, causing them to separate from the bronze matrix and fall as harmless powder that can be explained as accumulated dust from the temple's aging structure. The villagers interpret the powder's appearance as evidence of your spiritual power, concrete proof that foreign contamination has been purged from their sacred space by traditional Japanese methods. But the real victory lies in the intelligence value of the neutralized materials. Chemical analysis reveals not just their foreign origin, but also their specific composition, manufacturing techniques, and probable sources, information that allows the network to identify and neutralize similar devices at temples across Japan before they can be activated during religious festivals. The foreign plot to weaponize Japanese spiritual traditions has not only failed, but also provided crucial intelligence about enemy capabilities and intentions. As the village celebrates its autumn festival around a temple bell that rings with pure bronze voices rather than foreign psychological warfare, you realize that Mochizuki Chiyome's vision has achieved something unprecedented in Japanese history: the transformation of individual survival into collective resistance, personal revenge into national defense, and orphaned girls with temple bells into guardians of Japanese independence. The sound that echoes across the valley as evening falls isn't just the bronze voice of a temple bell calling the faithful to prayer. It's the victory song of a network that learned to fight invisible wars with invisible weapons, proving that Japan's greatest defense against foreign domination wasn't samurai swords or castle walls, but the determination of people who refuse to let their country's destiny be decided by anyone except themselves. The Kunoichi Master's legacy lives on in every temple bell that rings across Japan, carrying the message that some things are worth fighting for, some traditions are worth preserving, and some freedoms are worth defending with bronze voices that will never be silenced by foreign interference or domestic betrayal. The Ronin chose honor over law, the Kunoichi chose Japan over everything else. Would you have made the same choice? Or would you have accepted foreign protection in exchange for peaceful surrender?